and I'll let the distinguished Dr. Larry SMARR make the panel introductions. So let's welcome our first panel, and let's make the right connection.
Yeah, Anna and ILKAY. Yeah. Well, it's great to be here. Love scenic. I've been engaged on the board, I guess, for close to 20 years. And it's so appropriate to have this kickoff panel talking about inclusion and diversity enabled by regional optical networks and other networking capabilities, because scenic is a community of people, and it is the most diverse from K through 12 and libraries up through top-ranked research universities. It's the most diverse group of any regional optical network in the country, and it's if you haven't experienced it, it's really hard to understand the inclusion and how much we find common ground between, you know, K through 12 and UCSD and so forth. I wish that it was a broader, but I think it's a model for what we're talking about. On the minds we need, we're bringing so many people into participation that wouldn't be otherwise, and it's the whole world is a battle for talent, and the talent is everywhere. It just isn't always having the capabilities of participating, and that's what this revolution of networking is all about. I'm really pleased. I'm just the moderator. I'll have a few remarks at the end, but the three panelists here are three of my closest colleagues, and have worked with them for years, and some cases over a decade or two. It's just a thrill to have them on the stage. Richard Allo, who is remote, but wanted to be here, has been a real a pioneer and a real warrior for many years on the whole inclusion of minority serving institutions, and as you'll see, he's been at three at a high level. Houston downtown, at Jackson State, and now at Florida A&M. And he's going to kick off. Then Anna HUNSINGER, who is the Vice President for Engagement of Internet 2, and co-chair of our NRP conference, has been just a wonderful person to work with on enlarging the participation nationally. Because Internet 2, of course, connects everybody, all of the campuses. And then ILKAY ALTINTAS, who's the Chief Data Science Officer at the San Diego Supercomputer Center, is a co-PI and very close research colleague of mine. But she's, besides the Chief Data Science Officer at SDSC, also a founding faculty fellow of the HDSI, the Data Science Institute at UC San Diego, and has an incredible track record of building systems that engage all of society, including citizens, into things like her wildfire work that are on a scale that just haven't been done before. So I think it's so appropriate to have all three of them here, these are people who have been spending their lives on the subject that we're talking about. And so I appreciate CNIC bringing together this group for the conference. Richard, we're going to start with you, coming in from Florida.
Well, thank you, Larry. I appreciate this. I envy you all, by the way, being out there in beautiful Monterey, just being together at the conference itself. But also, it would be nice to run away from Tallahassee because we're expecting a big hurricane tomorrow, Hurricane Ian, if you've been hearing the news. Anyway, thank you. I really appreciate this invitation to address this landmark regional network. It really inspires replication across the country. I assure you that we in Florida and at Florida A&M are trying to model ours after yours. By the way, we do intersect in many ways. I do serve on the board of the Southern Light Rail, or often referred to as Southern Crossroads. We have a new NSF-CC STAR grant to improve HBCU connectivity. Also, I do serve on the Cyber Florida Governing Council, and we do promote all of this as impact on the digital sciences that are arriving. So let me begin. For many years, our focus has been to move the needle on overcoming this vast underrepresentation of historically underrepresented minority PhDs in STEM. Discrete mathematics, big data, and the National Research Platform do provide significant and alternative pathways to a PhD in STEM, and they do support the basis for what we call the A in STEAM. My point of, or proof of concept, I guess, is in 2014, leaving the National Science Foundation, I took up the position of Dean at Jackson State University and began the first PhD in big data at any minority serving institution. So right now, 9 of my mentees have graduated in that program, and 4 of those are historically underrepresented minorities, plus 1 female. And they're from non-STEM backgrounds, those 5. And now, guess what? They're doing postdocs at the University of Pennsylvania, or have done postdocs at the University of Pennsylvania Med School, Washington University Med School, Carnegie Mellon University, and also Chapel Hill. We also have them working at Cisco and FedEx in Silicon Valley, and Volvo USA and academia. So 2 years ago, we submitted a renewal for our Florida, Georgia, Lewis B. Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation grant. NSF asked us this big question. They said, you all had, not just us, but many AMP programs. You've had these programs for 25 years. What more can we do to move the needle to overcome this vast underrepresentation of historical underrepresented minorities? Our response was this. First of all, bring in a sociologist, and we asked the research question, what are the non-cognitive factors detracting or attracting young people either from STEM or into STEM? And then we also went after NSF, one of 3 of NSF's big ideas, to run across the alliance the following concepts. Harnessing the data revolution, convergent research, and includes. And so those were the focus of that AMP program. So our AMP is a very interesting lab, and I want to point this out to you for studying broadening participation, because the institutions are 14 that are involved in this, and there are HBCUs, there are HSIs, predominantly white institutions, emerging HSIs, 4-year institutions, and 2-year institutions. Also, Florida in itself is 16.9% African American and over 27% actually Hispanic. And the median age is 44. Very interesting lab to study broadening participation. So here, back in 2016, 35,557 research doctorates were awarded to U.S. citizens and permanent residents, which at the time was an all-time high. In 2020, this had decreased to 14,492. a decrease of over 1,000. The proportion of underrepresented minority doctorate recipients, Black, African American, Hispanic or Latino, and American Indian or Alaskan Native among U.S. citizens and permanent residents remains stable, more or less, to 2019, 16%. But as you can see, only 3.8% of the 4,000 PhDs in math, statistics, computer science went to underrepresented minorities. By the way, women constitute a third of those, and a third of those given in physics and earth sciences, and a quarter of those awarded in engineering, math, and computer science. So there's a whole litany of research that you can go after, that despite our resource disparities and the fact that we represent only 3% of the institutions of higher education, HBCUs are our top producers of the bachelor's degree to Blacks in STEM. 38% of Blacks that receive biological sciences, 31% in mathematics, bachelor's degrees these are, 35% in computer science, and 22% in engineering. So that being said, I mean, take a look at this particular chart, and it shows you that our HBCUs make up, again, 3% of the institutions of higher education, but produce, 25% of our bachelor's degrees in STEM undergraduates. Hispanic serving institutions make up 17% of our institutions of higher education, and they produce 67%. So the Census Bureau does predict that we're going to have a rapid growth of underrepresented minorities in the next few decades. And so this is a very fascinating, most recent chart that has come out from the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics. There's the top of the, take a look at the top bar. The top bar shows 50% of the 20 to 34 age group in this country of the US population is Anglo. The top bar shows that 40% is Black, Hispanic, or more than one race. And the bottom bar shows this group has 20% of the PhDs in STEM. Very interesting data. This one is even more interesting because here we show that the second curve from the top shows China PhD production with a much more acute tangent line slope than the US, which is the top curve. China, with more than 4 times our population, their curve is ready to cross the US curve, okay? So how does the research and education ecosystem benefit from including underrepresented minorities? Well, with STEM enrollments declining, we really seek innovative ways and projects to change the tide. We're evolving digital professions. We're also evolving cyber-enabled sciences. With a strong minority population, it is critical that higher education policies, pedagogies, climates, and initiatives be effective in promoting racial, ethnic minorities, educational attainment in STEM. MSIs have shown the efficacy in facilitating success of racial and ethnic minority students in STEM. Collectively, we're responsible for producing nearly 1/3 of the nation's minority STEM graduates. Missing Millions, a very important document that has come out, Alan Blatecki and team. And what does it tell us? It tells us that regional networks really can help us. MSIs, by providing a regional community, a working community of peers, a community for a sense of belonging and engagement, a vibrant community for growth and sustainability, and access, of course, access to resources. So regional networks also can promote and provide more shared services to our communities. A faculty and IT development education also educate senior administrators, very important aspect that we seek out. And another very important opportunity for our regional networks is to help develop joint proposals for external funding. Regional networks, what can they do as far as attracting HBCUs and MSIs? By engaging them with R1 and R2, this is institutions. This is a very important strategy that we have used and have very much involved with our colleagues here in Scenic, actually. For example, in writing these NSF/CC STAR grants, we've been involved in many of those, and this is a very tremendous opportunity. So, of course, again, assisting MSIs in overcoming some of the barriers. For our MSIs, we have a proposal that was put into NSF. It's called the Minority Serving Cyber Infrastructure Consortium, and my colleague on the panel, Anna Hunsinger from Internet 2, will tell you more about that. But one of the important things is to remember that through the racial oppression that HBCUs and tribal colleges emerged, and they emerged from these, and from their foundation to the present, these institutions have continued to defend and define their existence. Understanding how HBCUs developed to promote new educational, social, and economic opportunities for African Americans is critical in shaping a redefined perspective about American higher education. And so here, in July of 2014, The Economist, they had a cover feature article, and it recognized that American universities, challenged by the new technologies and new labor markets, must reinvent itself. Reinventing is not easy, but it does promise a better, more affordable education for many more people. And so here is the National Research Platform as we know it. And we recognize that it does provide a significant key and a foundation for reinventing the university. It provides our institutions with access, very important, access to the world of data. The world of data is now the new currency on our campuses. It also provides us access to survival, as many professions become digital professions, and allows a focus on the cyber-enabled sciences, where we merge market science with domain sciences. It also provides alternative paths for broadening participation by taking young people with a non-STEM background and allowing them to become STEM professionals in addition to whatever discipline they have. That's what I call about putting the A into STEAM. So it emphasizes the role of big data, science, and engineering. And it's also helping to tear down a wall between research and teaching. It also emphasizes that discrete mathematics plays an alternative to entering STEAM professions. Rutgers, if you go back 30 some years, NSF funded a science and technology center at Rutgers University. It was the Center for Discrete Mathematics and Theoretical Computer Science, and it was making this particular case that, that calculus is not for everybody. Discrete mathematics can also play a role. So NRP, the National Research Platform, going back to this, is definitely tearing down a wall between research and teaching. It's laying a foundation for a new consortium, and Anna Hunsinger will tell you about that. So NSF has made major contributions to getting to this point where we are that Anna will tell you about. And you can see this primer that I have here on engaging MSIs starts back in 1999, where we were just trying to get people connected to the internet. So, and this is what Anna will tell you about, I'm sure. And we do have a Center of Excellence, demonstration pilot, and we have this consortium. NSF has awarded us a new grant that Anna will tell you about to help us hook up now to our HBCUs, tribal colleges, and MSIs in general. So thank you, and join our mission. It's all about realizing our futures by producing globally competitive scientists, engaging at the cutting edges of our industrial advancements. Industry has a lot to tell us here in education about where our curriculum needs to go. So let's all contribute to overcoming this vast underrepresentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate your making the extra effort to join us, using the very technology that you're talking about. And so we're going to now, it's a very natural change to go over to Anna Hunsinger, since she and Richard are actually, she's the PI and he's one of the co-PIs on this new grant that she's going to talk about, as well as her more general experience in Internet 2 and all the great work she's done to expand engagement. Anna?
Thank you, Larry. Good morning. How's everybody doing? So good to be here. Thank you. And again, my name is Anna Hunsinger, and I'm the Vice President of Community Engagement at Internet 2. Let's see if this works. Okay. In spring 2020, a group of chief information officers and other leaders like Dr. Allo from historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, approached Internet 2 and about their vision and an emerging collaboration of HBCUs, tribal colleges and universities, TCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, HSIs, and other minority serving institutions, MSIs. These leaders had been meeting since 2018, and as you saw from Dr. Allo, this started also sometime even before that point in time. And, meeting between trusted peers to discuss issues and challenges confronted by their campuses. The Minority Serving Cyber Infrastructure Consortium, MSCC, emerged from these conversations, and today, MSCC envisions a transformational partnership to promote advanced cyber infrastructure, CI, capabilities on HBCU, TCUs, HSIs, and MSI campuses. Here we go. This vision is driven by inclusion, value, and making an impact through shared ownership and commitment from these institutions. As many of you know, historically, Internet 2 has largely been focused on supporting research-intensive institutions. It is worth noting that as this group approached me and others at Internet 2, an uncomfortable yet undeniable reality of how little Internet 2 had done to directly engage and understand the gaps between their campus networks and both the national and global R&E ecosystem. That was front and center. I will say that myself, along with many colleagues from Internet 2, went and continue to be on a very long and humbling journey. For me, what started in 2019 is still a realization of how much I and many others still have to learn and do. Internet 2, CNIC, and many other organizations operate infrastructure and services that advance research and education. We operate networks, data, we operate networks, but manage, and we've seen firsthand the incredible things that you can do when you can enable those networks, data, storage, compute, clouds, identity and access, people, et cetera, what we call cyber infrastructure. Today, so much of what we do across higher education is increasingly dependent on it, right? To advance science, to advance the mission of our universities and the grand challenges that are facing our society and, quite frankly, our planet. We know that CI enables faculty and students to collaborate and to contribute to research. But a sad reality is that while we know this, there are many in fact, thousands, millions in our higher ed ecosystem that are excluded from the conversations and that can relate to this. CI is what? And what does it do? And what it means for those voices that have been marginalized or underrepresented, excluded. And what do we do to take them center stage and start and steer these conversations based on their needs? Let's see. Okay. Minority-serving institutions play a, oops, I went a little too far, excuse me. I want to get to something. Don't look at these yet. There we go. There we go. Okay. MSIs play a critical role, as it was pointed by Richard, in reaching the missing millions by engaging underrepresented minorities through their education and research programs. For example, 25% of Black STEM degrees are granted by HBCUs, and 40% of STEM degrees to Black women are granted by just these institutions alone. In fact, HBCUs are the undergraduate origin for nearly 30% of Black graduates of science and engineering doctorate programs. American Indians and Alaskan Natives make up 78% of the student population at the nation's 37 TCUs, with the majority being non-traditional students from their institution's local tribal communities. These students, most of whom are working and raising families, are driven by STEM classes and programs that will help them contribute to the future of their local community. The designations for HBCUs, TCUs, and across other categories of MSIs have unique historical and cultural definitions beyond the makeup of their student bodies. Their institutional contexts vary enough to require individual considerations for CI strategic action across and within each category. There is not a one-size-fits-all. These institutions strive to meet the education needs of their students and to provide a unique environment of support to address the systemic challenges that their students and communities continue to face. Despite being systematically underserved and under-resourced, these institutions continue to uplift their students, and by extension, their communities, nurturing leaders across academic disciplines. These institutions have to be given the resources to grow and thrive because historically, they have done such huge work to get us to where we are at this moment. Looking ahead with increased interdependence and dependence on data of all fields and industries, these institutions and their faculty must prepare their students to participate in the STEM workforce through their education programs. Cyberinfrastructure is critical to reaching the missing millions beyond the research scope that many of us in the room have led with. The overarching theme of the Missing Millions report is that much work is needed to remove the barriers to cyber infrastructure access in historically underrepresented communities. I'm just echoing some of the things that Dr. Alo already mentioned. Not only is funding needed for additional campus infrastructure, but also resources to ensure that the infrastructure is upheld. Further, vibrant communities that include a working group of peers, a sense of belonging and engagement, and growth and sustainability are essential to ensure long-term participation from and engagement from these institutions. So this is where the MSCC is front and center. It is also why MSCC, with support from Internet, to propose a bold approach to the National Science Foundation in spring of 2021. Here we go. So, awarded in September of 2021, MSCC received funds towards a Center of Excellence demonstration pilot, which over the course of the 2-year grant period aims to increase access to cyber infrastructure resources to empower researchers at MSCC campuses in their use of cyber infrastructure. This slide covers some of the key pieces around the pilot. I'll just bring up key components include awareness, outreach, community building, and communication through MSCC as a more robust effort. For the past year, The MSCC has conducted surveys and consultations to better understand the shared challenges by a diverse set of minority-serving institutions. And we've used the survey data and also the consultations data to help us prioritize which areas to focus our community engagement work on. Cybersecurity, not a surprise, was one of the 3 highest ranked priorities. We've done a number of workshops. These are free. They're hosted at different members' institutions so that we can increase the likelihood that staff and faculty can participate from other campuses as well. And we want to catalyze those important regional connections as well between institutions. There has been a lot of effort to get the word out on MSCC, but again, I want to emphasize, as an effort driven and owned through the voices of HBCUs, TCUs, HSIs, and other MSIs. So while this past year has been great through the work of the MSCC, as we continue our discussions, we're learning that there are several shared challenges encountered by our colleagues and encountered by the campuses that we're working with. Let me give you a moment to read a little bit on this slide, okay? And as you read that, let me bring a few more issues. For example, as a result of limited resources, expertise, and capabilities, many of these campuses have struggled to identify and develop what are now required documents to many NSF solicitations. Okay, so this poses an immediate barrier to entry into the national CI ecosystem by MSCC campuses. And without the subsequent grant funding, campuses are limited in the types of research, scalability of the research that can be supported. As such, these institutions have a hard time, it's difficult to effectively engage or collaborate even with their own colleagues, or whether at the same institution or at different institutions. Access to resources and opportunities is essential, and the ability to use and execute these resources and opportunities is equally important, if not more important. Almost every MSCC institution wants and needs access to shared resources, and there's a strong desire to also have best practices, tools, and assessments that are based on their needs. Even with more funding and information guided by survey data, each campus may still have very different needs and new challenges in supporting the campus infrastructure, particularly when dealing with competing campus priorities. And then in most cases, campuses continue to have very limited resources and staff to keep the lights on and at the same time, just to keep the campus operating. So when are they going to have time to then focus on the research infrastructure too? This present reality continued to limit the time and commitment of many of these institutions, and again, the staffing resources that could be dedicated to addressing what the MSCC or others in partnership with the MSCC may recommend to do. Just to add to the last bullet here, it's also the case, there may be little awareness also of the need to have resources that can support research workflows, engagement, and the infrastructure to support research. And clearly no funding for those that could support those type of things. So in less than a year, and after being awarded the Center of Excellence Demonstration Pilot, MSCC, with expanded support from Internet 2, did another, I would call it a bolder proposal to the National Science Foundation. NSF is intrigued, yet committed to seeing if we can significantly increase and accelerate the CI-enabled research and education capacity at MSCC campuses by testing and learning from new approaches towards a repeatable, successful model. Maybe it's several models for CI implementations on minority-serving institutions and the campuses involved. This expanded and longer-term funding enables us to take a more directed approach in working with several HBCUs and TCUs and have MSCC provide them with campus-specific assessments to drive IT strategic plans, focus on supporting research for their faculty and students. We're doing so with intentionality, so that each of the campuses that we work with has dedicated access to expertise and resources, resulting in a tailored plan that supports their campus needs. I am very thankful for the support that the National Science Foundation is now investing in the MSCC. NSF used the MSCC as a change agent capable of advancing strategies and programs and the important research and education work of HBCUs, TCUs, HSIs, and other MSIs. Okay, I'm going to get to my closing here. Last week, I'll share with you, yes, it was a week ago, exactly, today, MSCC and Internet 2 hosted a gathering of HBCU presidents and Internet 2 leadership ahead of the White House HBCU week that took place last week in Washington, D.C. The event had the participation of leaders from the MSCC and presidents and leadership from at least 20 HBCUs. Beyond the opportunity to get people together, which is great, we convey a commitment that I think is really important, and that is that inherent in Internet 2's mission, and that is the improvement of cyber infrastructure capabilities for the MSCC. We need to do more. These were exactly the words used by the leadership of the Internet 2 board at this meeting. So there's still a very long journey ahead of us, one that I will say I'm truly honored to be part of. It's humbling and excited about the role that I get to play, but I'm going to invite all of you to also think about the role that you want to play. In closing, the expertise, ideas, and perspectives from the MSCC schools need to be more fully brought to bear on the scientific and societal changes facing our country. For years, our colleagues at HBCUs, TCUs, HSIs, and other MSIs have been responsible for nurturing their students, supporting their faculty, and uplifting their communities. All of us here today know how important it is to get students and faculty access to tools and resources so that they can pursue we know how important it is for students and faculty to have access to tools and resources so that they can pursue their research aspirations. That is the drive for MSCC. And through our collaboration with it, we hope our collective efforts can bridge digital divides that ensure the equal participation of historically underserved institutions within the U.S. and the global research and education communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. So, okay, you want to come up? So I think it's a perfect circle of fifths to take what Anna just said about the societal impact, and I think nobody could be better prepared to talk about that from her work over the last decade or two than ILKAY, because she has really shown how that can happen. ILKAY?
Thank you. I'll wait for a moment. Perfect. So, indeed, I think we have a definition of the long tail, and it ends at our universities. So I'm here to advocate, so that to add a layer to it, so we can think of the long tail or the longer tail as a diversity in our roles in the society and who we can bring up to speed with us, so that we'll feel the impact of cyber infrastructure and broadband more in the societal systems as benefit to society. And why are we here? Because we have big challenges to solve. Pandemic definitely taught us a lot, but we have grand challenges in climate. We have grand challenges in economic development, in public health, and in general fairness throughout the society. And these will all need smart and connected digital connectivity or digital technology. And this connectivity and overall its effects on the digital technology comes as impact already in things like big data systems, the way we refer to as our computing influence sciences, computational science, data science, cyber infrastructure, and more importantly, it's really about the ecosystem that impacts its applications. So it's the application of all of that is why we are doing this, and the applications are seen as impacting everywhere. You know, we had campaigns in the past, HPCs now, HPCs everywhere. You know, the infrastructure is impacting, you know, even the last person in the society. But how much are we impacting in terms of engagement with those communities and bringing them up to speed? Or is this something we are just telling that it's how it should be in terms of how we can engage with these communities and how we can actually help them do their work or their purpose, their role in the society? So how do we start engaging with them? Again, there are different methods that are emerging. NSF's word for it is convergence research. This is a big program under now the NEAV Technology Innovation and Partnerships Program, and it's really making impact to teach at least those of us who build projects within this program to do things a different way. And convergence research is an extension of cross-disciplinary research. Of course, it's all important to have disciplinary, multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary research. They have different definitions. But convergence is that part that we take these innovations and translate that into societal context within societal systems that actually they find shape in what we call use-inspired systems. And use-inspired science, actually you can think of Pasteur as a pioneer of that, and you think of different examples of it. It starts by understanding the need from a use point of view, from a practice point of view, and translating that. So it's a different way of doing science and technology to practice. This is really practice to science and technology. It's a bi-directional communication. And I think we need to go towards a world that systems should enable this collaborative thinking and forming teams around that that's cross-disciplinary and use-inspired. And we also are in a world, as we heard, data is currency across the board, and as we bring NEAV communities within AI up in coming communities within AI, we need to also think of integrating that knowledge that we are creating, the NEAV minds, so to be trained to actually integrate their knowledge in systems they are aware of, in their own world, in their own domains, in their own communities. So this is, in essence, not capacity or creating infrastructure. It's not just that anymore, but it's also creating a strategic ecosystem that actually thinks of capability and how we integrate the capability through broadband, through infrastructure, with the influence of cyber infrastructure into reusable services and integrated solutions made up of those services. So dynamic composability in terms of infrastructure matters. It requires broadband, and we've seen amazing examples in the slides, and Larry's leadership in national scale cyber infrastructure to compose capabilities into infrastructure in a distributed fashion has been amazingly impactful. And systems and services that are dynamic, built on top of those enabled applications like fire management, COVID, climate, dynamic climate assessment capabilities, and resilient systems across the society. And I think we need to couple those with responsible systems. We need to think of self-correcting systems in a more ethical, responsible fashion. And also that enables teamwork and respect between different communities who don't always think from the same point of view. So in that sense, building our systems and broadband and infrastructure is great. It's a great step forward, but I don't think it's enough for impact that we want to have in the society. We need to think translational, and we need to not just think translational, but we need to think engagement strategies for translation. And we need examples of digital technologies in the societal context, and also a translational workforce who can be the boundary between deep systems and infrastructure, deep knowledge, and also use-inspired work that needs to happen to integrate that knowledge into the society. And definitely we need to talk about broadband as the foundational infrastructure. Even in the COVID, students were expected to have broadband, and they didn't have connectivity. They had computers given by school systems, but they didn't have connectivity at home. So this was really difficult, even for families like mine who are, we have enough technology in our house, I want to think, but we were even having difficulty. I always thought of these communities with more children or less connectivity, how it was being dealt with. So that's the foundational infrastructure for everything I'm talking about here. So just to be solution-oriented, what can we do? What are some new programs we can think of to increase our impact? I think we need to create chapters in our professional societies to increase cross-sector representation, and we ourselves need to step forward to create those programs. Government panels, just like here, actually, CINIC is a great example of having these cross-sector interactions, which are, I think, hugely impactful and taught me a lot over the years. We need experiential research curriculum designed from a translational point of view. So applications and user experience at the front of those, and making the technology accessible to different audiences. So definitely some marketing campaigns from the impact point of view, public installations, edge computing and outreach platforms. We can actually, sort of the Apple Store context of, can you touch computing in a public installation and how that could actually impact. If you can get 20% to actually think differently, I think we'll be successful. And we taught computing in computing classes and in maybe specialized classes that, we assumed people can script. But is there a different way to do it? Can we actually go beyond scripting and programming and really integrate service-based versions of our infrastructure in domain classes, so the people who are going to actually go out to the world in specific disciplines and domains or in collaborative cross-disciplinary projects, they are used to using it and understanding it even without doing infrastructure. I think that's something that we've seen as really useful in a number of projects. So as a summary, I think we are talking about computing in a way that we understand. And although great examples of translational communication exist, I think we need to do more of it to be heard and to be understood as vital to those systems. Because infrastructure is that when I turn on my power switch, if it works, I don't see that as infrastructure. I see that as something in the background. Network and computing and all the digital technologies are like that. If it works, nobody has to know that it's there, but they need to have an understanding of the importance in our lives. We know we are power dependent. Do we know we are computing dependent? Do we know we are network dependent as a society? And I think through the pandemic, we understood a little bit, but we understood how much others heard that, and they've seen it as a vital need. And translational is, I think, comes in all kinds of ways, not at the use-inspired thinking. I think at the teaching level, we need to think translational and experiential so that we can create some clinical, so to say, people who practice computing on top of the services and capabilities that they can integrate into their solutions and systems or daily work, and at every level of their career. So we need to target the decision makers as much as the up-and-coming diverse students so that we can create a world that we can integrate infrastructure and broadband into solutions. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, ILKAY. I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to give you an example. We've talked a lot about how regional optical networks are critical for expanding. Let's see, I've got slides if you can get them up. Yeah, great, thanks. And go ahead and put them in the slide. Yeah, that's good. So Richard mentioned the National Research Platform, but it started with the Pacific Research Platform that CENIC incubated. Without CENIC, it wouldn't have happened, and we had several other regional optical networks, the Front Range, IMRIN, and the Pacific Northwest Gigapop. Then we got other NSF grants that Internet 2 and the Quilt helped us expand to the Midwest, to Texas, the Great Plains Network, to NISERNet, to Kinber. And that mapping you see in the background of the Quilt plus Internet 2, that is all of the regional networks in the country that have been making this expansion possible. Let me just show you, and I've just got 3 slides, and I'll come back and we'll talk about this in a panel tomorrow with Tom DeFonte and Frank Wertheim on the National Research Platform. But I'm just going to take you through the states of the last 7 years, how this expansion, all of the campuses you see have someone that have logged in and used the PRP, and the ones in green are minority serving institutions. The states in red are the NSF EPSCoR states, which are the lower half of the 50 states in terms of getting NSF money. And that EPSCoR is to stimulate competition and to help those states become included in the research engagement. And you can see in the West here how many EPSCoR states and how many MSIs there are. When you go to the Midwest, again, a lot of red EPSCoR states, fewer MSIs. And then to the East Coast, again, a lot of MSIs in green and EPSCoR states. I mean, remember, this all started in California out of CENIC. And the only reason the PRP was possible is all of you who are part of CENIC gave us that social base to start with in building out this campus by campus. So we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but it is an example. I'm blown away at how many people, once you give them an opportunity, will log in and use something like this, which is a vast set of computing and storage capability, actually now global in extent. Thanks for all of your attention. We're just on time for ending and starting the next panel, next presentation. So let's thank again all the panelists.